Hey y'all, it's Loren LoRosa with the latest with Loren LoRosa, and today, as you guys see, I'm not outside of the courtroom. I am actually in the back of an SUV because I left court trying to make my flight, but I was like, I gotta get there for Kid Cudi's testimony. Missed my flight, but don't worry, all is good. I am rebooked, I'm on my way, but y'all know I am here to give y'all the latest because I had to get this update in. So Kid Cudi took the stand today. As I told you guys that they mentioned in court yesterday, the testimony would be short, and it was very much that. It was very to the point of the alleged arson, a bit of background about the relationship, and then boom, moved on. So Kid Cudi took the stand as one of the prosecution's witnesses, and began to testify about an incident that he claims went down with him, Diddy, and Cassie. Now, he took the stand around 10:40 a.m., finished not too long after that. But he says, and he was in a black leather jacket, white shirt, black belt, blue jeans, dangling earring on his left ear. He says that he met Cassie some years back at an event in New York. They dated briefly in 2011. He says that he was aware that she was dating Diddy, however, well, previous to him, because he says, look, I knew she was dating him before, but when, we linked up, she said that was over, that was done with. So he thought that it was all go. So then the prosecutors asked him about an incident that took place at his home, December 2011, where police had to be called to his home. And they asked him, what was the incident? He says, someone broke into my house. Now, we have heard about this alleged arson incident for a very long time, through civil lawsuits, through the indictments. But this was the first time I heard about the home break-in, the alleged home break-in that he is also trying to connect to Diddy. So he says that somebody broke into his home, so police had to be called to his house. He said he got a phone call at like 5 or 6 a.m. From Cassie, and she was, very upset, and he could tell that she was very shaken. So he didn't know what was going on, but as they're on the phone, he says that Cassie says to him that Diddy had allegedly found out about them. And he's like, I was confused because at that point, I really thought that she was no longer dealing with Diddy. So when he said that, I already knew where this was going. I asked her, found out about us, what you mean? And she explained that, whatever the situation was, that he found out about them, and, basically he needed to come and pick her up. So the prosecutors say, okay, well, when she said found out about us, what did you understand that to mean? And he said that he understood that to mean that Diddy had found out that they were dating. So then he said, even though he was confused because he thought that her and Diddy was done, because of how scared she sounded on the phone, especially because she was mentioning too that Diddy had said that he was going to go to Kid Cudi's house and all these things allegedly. He was like, all right, I just wanted to go pick her up and make sure she was safe. Specifically, he said that she sounded stressed, nervous, and scared. So he says he went and picked her up. He took her to the Sunset Marquis. The prosecutors asked him, okay, well, why did you go to the Sunset Marquis? So he's like, no reason, but the fact that that's just a hotel that I used to frequent in LA. And they're like, well, why did you go to a hotel? And he says, well, I took her to a hotel because I figured that would be safe. And they're like, what do you mean that would be safe? And he said that he alleged that Cassie explained that Diddy was really, really upset, that Diddy planned to go to his home, and he had already known the background info, or some background info, of the domestic violence that Cassie was experiencing, because he says Cassie had actually come out and told him that Diddy would get physical with her. So he was like, I was just nervous for her. So he got her to the Sunset Marquis. They introduced Capricorn Clark again, who has been coming up in court almost every single day at this point. And Kid Cudi, so they asked Kid Cudi who was Capricorn Clark. So he's like, oh, that was a friend of Cassie's. So then they show a photo to him to identify her. They're like, okay, is this Capricorn Clark? And he's like, yes. So they bring the photo up. They show the jurors and all of us the photo. So he's like, they would all hang out a lot because she was a good friend of Cassie's. So the day that all of this happened, Capricorn Clark and him ended up on the phone. Capricorn Clark and Cudi ended up on the phone. The prosecutors asked him, okay, well, normally when you talk to Capricorn Clark, how is it? He was like, oh, normally it's on speakerphone. And she was like, but what's her demeanor? And he was like, normally just regular, she's on speakerphone, me, her, and Cassie are talking. And they say the night the day that all of this happened, that Diddy found out about all this stuff, and you know, the alleged break-in and cops coming into your home, then that time when all of this happened, how did her demeanor sound? And he said that she answered the phone, and Capricorn Clark allegedly sounded very scared. He described it as Capricorn Clark being on the verge of tears. He says that while she was on the phone, Capricorn Clark told Kid Cudi that she was allegedly forced to go with Diddy. She was forced into a car to go with Diddy to Kid Cudi's house, and that Diddy was going to be at his house when he arrived there. Prosecutors had asked Kid Cudi, like, well, how did Diddy even know where to go? How did he know where your house was at? And he said, Cassie gave him my address. So he says after he talked to Capricorn Clark, he then got in the car and went to his house. Like, he wasn't ducking no smoke. He got in the car, went to his house, and he said at the time he was living in the Hollywood Hills, and that there was two gates. So like when you came to the house, there was one gate, and then you go in and there's like you know, the entrance to the actual home. So he says that was about like a 15-minute drive from the Sunset Marquis to his house. So he's driving. While he's driving, he says he had Diddy's number, and he called Diddy allegedly. And he had Diddy's number just from, you know, just from around, right? They're both music artists. So he called Diddy, and he's like, and this was so funny. He was actually like, so he was very like to the point. Like, y'all know Kid Cudi's like personality. If not, he's very like to the point. Like, Kid Cudi is Kid Cudi. But he was like, I'm gonna be candid. And the prosecutors was like, okay, because they were asking him, well, what did you say when you allegedly called Diddy? He said, I'm gonna be candid. I said, hey, motherfucker, you at my house? And Diddy said, I just want to talk to you. And Kid Cudi said, well, I'm on my way right now. And Diddy said, okay, I'm here waiting on you, allegedly. So Diddy, he says his voice was calm the whole time on the phone. It was a very calm demeanor. And Kid Cudi was telling the prosecutors, like, you know, because they asked him, like, did you have cameras out front of your house? And he's like, I did have cameras. But he alleges that when he got to his home, he realized that the cameras they normally angled down to the door, to the front door. And he realized that when he got to his house, the cameras were angling away from the door. So they didn't capture anything. Basically, he was alleging that this was done because of whoever went into his home. And he alleges that Diddy was who went into his home. So he said when he got into his home, there were like some gifts that he had brought for his family from Chanel. So that stuff was opened. He said that his dog was allegedly locked up in a bathroom. And that was weird because he normally lets his dog roam all over the house. Like, he never locks his dog in the bathroom. Now the prosecutors asked, well, you know, after this incident, how was your dog? Like, how did your dog act? And he said, well, after this incident, my dog was like very jittery, very on edge all the time. So now Kid Cudi leaves his home. He gets in his car. He's calling Diddy allegedly, and he says Diddy answers, and Kid Cudi was asking him like, yo, where you at? Diddy keeps saying to him, I'm on my way, I'm on my way. Like, Diddy is telling him allegedly he's on his way to his home. And Kid Cudi hangs up, and he's like, you know, I took a second and I thought about it, because I started thinking to myself, I don't know who he's with, I don't know what he has on him, I don't know his intentions, I don't know anything. So it doesn't make any sense for me to try and find him right now. Decided to just chill. He went back to his house, and then he called police again. Now, when he called police, he did make a report for the break-in, and he said he saw Cassie after all of this, and that she was stressed out. Now we move on, right? So now Christmas comes along. So after all of this, Cassie and Kid Cudi head to Cassie's parents' home. Not too shortly after this, head to Cassie's parents' home in Connecticut. Now, we've heard about this visit to Cassie's parents' home in Connecticut multiple times. We've heard about it from Cassie, from her point of view. We've heard about it from Cassie's mother as well, briefly. And now we're hearing about it from Kid Cudi. Now, Kid Cudi is saying that, you know, during the visit to her parents' house, Cassie needed to be there. Like, he was like, you know, being with her parents at that time, she needed to be around them. She was able to calm down. She was very calm. She needed to be around family. He says while he was there, Diddy allegedly texted him a few times, because remember, Diddy was saying, like, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Because at this point now, Diddy is trying to have a conversation allegedly about what their relationship is. Like, he's like, okay, like, I need to get to the bottom of this. So Kid Cudi is like, you know, Diddy allegedly texted him a couple times, but he didn't give him too much, so it stopped. So then going into New Year's of January 2012, their relationship like just dies out. Cassie on her testimony said that she broke up with him going into the new year. Kid Cudi said it just kind of like faded out, like they just stopped talking. And for him, he said it was just a lot going on. Like he felt like it was best that they just stopped talking because it was a lot of drama. January 2012, right? So we're into the new year. Kid Cudi says he's at his ex-girlfriend's sister's house just chilling, and then he gets a call from his dog sitter around like 6-7 o'clock in the morning. And the dog sitter is like, hey, your car is on fire in the driveway. And he's like, what? So he goes home. While he's on his way home, he has one of his friends send him a photo of the damage of the car. Now, here is the photos of some of the damage from the car. So as you see here, you have his rag top, a Porsche at that time. He has a rag top. The rag top was split. He says it wasn't like this before he left his house, that it was split. And he did say that, of course, he felt like this was done on purpose. So he says that the top was split, as we see, and a cocktail was thrown into the car, which then caused the fire. Fire, as we see, affected the immediate inside. It was thrown on the driver's side of the car. So here is some of the damage. So the roof was cut on the soft top of the Porsche. There's smoke damage to the driver door. There's a seat burned up. So you guys see the red has turned black on the driver's side. Kid Cudi said that when he got back home to his house, the cops were at his house when he arrived. And the cops had, verified that the cocktail had been thrown into his car, which caused the fire. And that they actually showed it to him. Now, when they asked him who he thought was responsible, he of course said that he felt like it was intentional. And he, reiterates that he believes that the damage was intentional. And he says the last time he saw Cassie, just in general, up until the day that we're seeing him on the stand, was 2012 at the Soho house. Now, he then goes into this meeting that we've been hearing a lot about. So Cassie had testified that Diddy was still upset, allegedly, and wanted to sit down with her and Kid Cudi. So they sat down at a restaurant. Kid Cudi is like, okay, we sat down at the Soho house, but before, and this wasn't in 2012, right? Because in 2012 we ran into her at the Soho house, but they're like, wait, back up. You were at the Soho house another time, and you ran into Cassie. Can you talk to us about that meeting? So he's like, it was the next day after the car on fire incident. He had reached out to Diddy because at this point he says he was just tired of all of the drama. He was like, by the time it got to the car being set on fire, he's like, yo, this is too much. We just need to talk. So he reached out to Diddy. They met up at the Soho house. He reached out, his manager actually reached out to D-Rock, who we know has been identified as Diddy's security. So they meet up. He says, he alleges when he comes in the room, they met in a conference room in one of the Soho houses in LA. But he says that those conference rooms are not there anymore. But he comes in and he said Diddy is standing allegedly at the window. There's a huge window on one side of the room. Diddy is standing at the window with his hands behind his back, like he was like a superhero, like a Marvel supervillain. That's how he described it. Everybody in the courtroom, of course, started laughing. So then they start having a conversation. And he says, from the conversation, the alleged conversation, he was able to take away that Diddy felt away because they were homies at one point. And Kid Cudi is like, well, I thought it was all fair game because I had been told that y'all were no longer together, that y'all had broken up, because that's what Cassie had told me. So then he says, into that conversation, Cassie arrives into the meeting, and Kid Cudi, of course, he's like, yo, I was upset because basically the story was spun to me completely different. And, she was a little upset as well, but she was just explaining how they met, how they fell in love. And again, Kid Cudi keeps mentioning that Diddy's demeanor allegedly was really calm throughout all of this stuff. He said that his demeanor was calm during the meeting to the point where it was almost eerie a little bit. So then he says at the end of the conversation, Kid Cudi is like, he stood up. He allegedly goes to shake Diddy's hand because at this point now that they had the conversation, it's like, all right, whatever, we moving on. And Kid Cudi's like, well, what about my car? Allegedly. And Diddy is like, I don't know what you're talking about. He says a few years later, he saw Diddy at the Soho house again. Diddy was with his daughter, one of his daughters, and he came up to him and just apologized and was like, yo, man, I'm sorry for all that drama and blah, 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 all those things. And then the prosecution rushed. So Brian Steele comes on cross. The minute that they announced that Brian Steele is, because they say like, oh, Brian's still coming up for the defense, or however they announce it. The minute they announced that, all of us in the courtroom were like, oh shoot, because Brian still get busy. So Brian still comes up and he is asking questions instantly, right? He's like, okay, let's point to the fact that there were fingerprints and DNA took from the car, correct? And Kid Cudi's like, correct. And he's like, Brian instantly points to the fact that there were allegedly findings that these DNA, you know, and all that stuff pointed back to a woman. So now we're all like, wait, what? They objected it. He tried to ask it a bunch of different ways, and it just was a mess. So we didn't really get too far on that. But Kid Cudi did say that he tried to stay in contact with the police so he could figure out, you know, more from the investigation and the information from the investigation. But he never gotten anything. He never got any more information. Then Kid Cudi goes into having the conversation about, you know, with Brian still just establishing his career and all of the things. And he's like, you know, just making a point to let it be known that both of them were major music artists at the time, around 2012. And he talks about the tour that Kid Cudi was on. But then he makes a point where I'm like, I get what they're trying to do, but I don't know how this is going to fare for the defense. So he makes it a point to bring up the burner phone, and Brian still makes it a point to bring up the burner phone that Cassie had, which is what Cassie had admitted that she was communicating with Kid Cudi on while they were dating, because she just didn't want Diddy to find out certain things or find out about him, because she just didn't think it would be safe, and she just didn't want the drama of him finding out, allegedly. But Brian still leaves with a mic drop of like, she played both of y'all, right? And he was like, right. And that was it. That was all. Now, from the prosecutor side, you're looking at this like, okay, slam dunk. We got Kid Cudi on the stand testifying firsthand to what he went through, the alleged arson, the phone calls with Diddy, the back and forth with Cassie, you know, and showing that, you know, she was trying to get away, but she just couldn't, allegedly, and all these things. On the defense's side, right, with Brian Steele, when he comes up, because he goes into this line of questioning about, because Kid Cudi kept mentioning that Diddy was so calm. Diddy was so calm. Diddy was so calm, right? And we had heard in other people's testimonies about Diddy allegedly carrying firearms and, you know, just different things to intimidate and to get his way and to, you know, do these different things. So Brian Steele asked him, like, you know, you was willing to go meet up with him. You didn't wonder or think if he might have been carrying a firearm? And he was like, didn't really think about it. And then he's like, and you say Diddy was like, he was calm in demeanor? He was like, yeah. And then they talk about even the home break, and they're like, so there was no forced entry, they just left your door unlocked? What Brian Steele was trying to set up was, he was downplaying the you know, this big, crazy, aggressive in nature, gun-slinging man that the prosecution is trying to set up. Let me know how y'all feeling. How y'all feel like this is gonna play. Me, myself, personally, my point of view, I don't know if this like it paints a picture of an incident that happened for sure, but I think it would have been a lot more got him on Diddy, for the prosecutors on Diddy, if they had been able to say that the DNA evidence came back as his, or something on the cameras, or if there was a phone conversation or something that Diddy admitted to. I mean, you have Kid Cudi's testimony, of course, and he's there and he went through it, but Kid Cudi didn't see Diddy throw that cocktail in his car that caused the fire. Kid Cudi didn't see Diddy or anyone involved, you know what I mean, do these things. So it's like, and the prosecution subtly, very subtly, leaned into, there was DNA allegedly found, even though they had to strike that, right? Then they talked about this calm demeanor, trying to make, you know, Diddy not seem like this big bad guy that the prosecution is trying to make him out to be. I'm Loren LoRosa. This is the latest with Loren LoRosa. The Kid Cudi testimony it happened. It's done. Let me know what you guys thought about the testimony and where you think, how valuable do you guys think that this testimony will be or not be? I want to hear from y'all.